Hello and welcome to another edition of the Rest is Entertainment Questions Edition. Questions and Answers. I am Marina Hyde.
Yes. There we go. Hello, everyone. I'm Richard Osmond. Welcome to Question and Answers. Are you well, Marina?
I'm very well. How are you?
Yes, I'm not bad. Should we just absolutely leap straight into it?
Leap in.
Literally last week when we did this Question and Answer edition, I had to shoot off because I was going on the wheel. And the only reason I went on the wheel is we had a couple of questions about it. And I'd asked the exec producer the answers, and he said, if you want to find out, you're going to have to come on. So I did that. So I have answers later in this episode.
That's such an extreme form of service journalism. It's like service entertainment guesting. I don't know what it is, but it's you go above and beyond for our listeners, and I can't wait to hear.
It's like being embedded.
Yes.
We'll start with a question for you, though, and it's from Theo Boardman-Pretty. There's a lot going on with that name, Theo, isn't there? Like you could do a thesis on Theo Boardman-Pretty. I like it, though. You've got to be noticed in this world, haven't you? I remember Xander on Point This. He once told me about he was on This Morning or something, and they had a guy who was a name specialist who came on the show, and he said, I think you need to change your name. He said, if I were you, I would call myself Alexander Lacey. So it's like, okay, because listen, names are important, especially in this world of branding. But Theo Boardman-Pretty absolutely nailed it. No, Theo, he also has a question, Theo.
Oh, right. He's got a question, right. Very good.
Yeah, he does. Yeah, in this Q&A episode. My question is about advice columns and agony aunts. I've always wondered who actually writes in and hopes that their personal and often ludicrously specific problems are written about in a national newspaper. What proportion of these questions are real?
I mean, can tell you right from the start, from my own knowledge, that they are all real. A huge number of people write in. It's really amazing, actually. And someone we spoke to a little bit about this, Gordon Smart, who is a former showbiz editor at The Sun, said that the Dear Deirdre letters, Dear Deirdre is The Sun's advice column, they were 100% genuine, and often that desk had the biggest mailbag delivery in the whole building. I can confirm that. Now, Deirdre was amazing to work with, says Gordon. She was lovely, genuinely caring, and wrote so much for it. She was the ultimate pro. Now, listen, there was also a thing called Deirdre's photo casebook, where there would be almost, like and you could be in photos, and there would be a story, like, I think my boyfriend's cheating on me, but it would be done with speech bubbles and whatever, but with real photos of real people. I have been in one of those. When I was a secretary on the Sun showbiz desk, I was in one with the TV critic now, and who worked on the showbiz desk at the time, Ali Ross. And then there was a rather glamorous girl who I can't remember. I was her sort of unattractive best friend. And that was the role I played. I was fully clothed at all time. I think actually she really got down to her underwear, as often happened in Deirdre's photo casebook.
They always did. Almost all the problems in the casebook were underwear related.
Yeah, they were. But I have to say, so anyway, that I have been in one. But pages...
Does that exist somewhere, Marina? Can we find that?
I would love to find it. I wonder if I've got, but my mother just sent me a whole load of boxes of stuff, like, the non-presidential archive, and that would certainly be in it. But I should try and see if I can find it, because she would have kept something like that. I mean, I don't know why she would have kept something like that. At least I was, as I say, the unattractive best friend. But and problem pages in magazines. When I was growing up, when I was a girl, oh my God, that was the first thing we turned to. You went to, in Just 17 or something like that, you went to problem page first. They rate enormously still. If you look on the Guardian website, where it's the most easy, I think, of all the national newspapers to see what is getting masses of readers at any one time. If you go down to the bottom of the thing, you can see what's being not only read most, but deeply read. Every time there is a problem that is read, that it always makes that top 10, and it always makes the deeply read top 10. And you've got people obviously people who became huge figures as Agony Aunts, Claire Rayner, Dolly Alderton nowadays doing, Pamela Stevenson does a sexual healing one in The Guardian that was, very, very popular. People love them, and people write in. Now, the actual, probably people don't know this, sorry, I'm going off at a real tangent, but I do think this is quite interesting. The history, problem pages have been around since the late 17th century. There was this guy who was a printer, which was helpful.
Wow.
Yeah, he was having an affair, but he couldn't bring himself to, he was a guy called, I think his name was something like John Dunton, I could get that wrong, but he was having an affair and he couldn't bring himself to tell anyone about it. And he thought, because he would identify himself. And then he thought, hang on, but that's actually quite a good idea. And he started this thing called the Athenian Gazette, which later became the Athenian Mercury. And it was the first kind of interactive publication in the sense that people wrote in and people got,
wow.
And the advice was sometimes on philosophical problems, like how can I tell if I'm awake or if I'm dreaming, things like that. And they were answered in a very, exactly. These are sort of simple, and they were answered in quite a simple way. But also people wrote in with their problems, and it became so big that he got a separate spin-off one for women. These things have been big business forever. So they are real, and people really do write in. And as far as I know, I've never heard of people writing fake problems in.
But it's got that lovely thing, a problem page of you either thinking, oh, that's a bit like me, or oh, thank goodness that's not me.
Exactly. And you think, what would I have said? And you come to think these people are so sage and wise, and really good writers have ended up doing them in their time, and people who have such a sort of, a really open and wonderful sensibility, and you learn a lot. And they've been enormously important actually in making people understand things about, I don't know, access to abortion, in going back in the old days, family planning, all sorts of things like that. Those people really dragged on the conversation and helped people ask to know even for what rights they wanted to ask for. They've been really crucial in the story of all sorts of things in history. And I think that I do not know of any fake letters that have ever been written in.
Philippa Perry does a great one as well, and that feels an awful lot. It's often talks about family relationships and difficulties with that and communication, and it feels like therapy is a very expensive thing to get, and you can get such wisdom through the answers to quite specific questions sometimes, because often the answers to problems are the same. Whatever the problem is, it's usually a symptom of something that's fairly universal. And reading that sort of stuff, I always think is incredibly helpful. I'm sure, by the way, some of them have been made up in history.
But it's not the prevalent way of doing it, because you get so many are sent in that you really have no need to make them up. And actually, as so often when you hear these things, you think, gosh, I couldn't have even come up with that one. Some of them are so sort of extraordinary, and the level of detail is so intricate, because people can write quite sort of slightly longer things than now that we do them online, and really they give you a lot more background information, and you think that this is and they give you the language. The answers give you the language, as you say, the therapy thing for talking about some of these things. We didn't understand in lots of ways how to talk about those things until people like Claire Rayner taught us how.
It's also, on a more prosaic note, a good place to get little ideas for plots.
I was going to say, I bet you've used those before. Yeah.
I mean, it's not for me. Plots have never been my problem, but people often ask, well, where do you come up with plots? And I pick them from everywhere. But yeah, if you read about an absolutely intractable, people only write into these things if they've got an absolutely intractable problem. And intractable problems are very, very useful particularly in crime fiction, but in any sort of fiction, romantic fiction. Someone who's absolutely end of their tether and is thinking, I cannot see a way through this. And fortunately, most people would just write to an agony aunt, but in books, that could lead to rather a handy little plot.
There's actually a fun history of Agony Aunts, I think, written by Tanith Carey, and I recommend that because it really takes you through the whole story.
Thank you, Theo. Thank you, Marina. Dear Marina. You should do an advice column.
I've got no advice.
Pull yourself together.
Does a podcast. Right, here we go. Mr. Service Journalist Richard Osmond. From a question on the wheel from Ben Arnold. Please, can you settle a family argument?
Ben Arnold, as in Benedict Arnold, the American revolutionary traitor.
Yes, it is him.
Wow.
Yeah.
How old must he be now?
He's getting knocking on a bit, but he loves the wheel. He's a huge fan of the wheel. Now, what he wants to know is, on the wheel, are the contestants really in a separate area underneath the main celebrity wheel? My son thinks they are, but I can't believe that each contestant has a chair that can be lifted up. It doesn't make logistical sense that they would have to build 3.
It's a great question, Ben. So Ben asked this quite a long time ago. And as I say, I thought, well, this is easy. I'll ask Dan Baldwin, who's the exec on that, or Tom Blakeson, who's the producer. I'll just say, guys, tell me about the contestant wheel. And both of them ganged up on me and said, well, you can come and see the contestant wheel, mate, if you want to. I'm like, oh, okay, they've got me. So I literally had like kind of a 2 hour in between finishing the book and funnily enough, doing the podcast. I was able to go and film one, which I did last week. So, and they showed me around. They showed me everything. Now, so if people watch the wheel. You've got the main celebrity wheel at the top, and the contestants who are coming to play rise up through the floor. So there's 3 possible contestants. They get spun around, and so it's random which one gets chosen, and they rise up onto the set, and suddenly they're in the middle of these celebrities. And you go into that studio, and it's a big airfield. There's lots of these huge studios now. And they chose this studio because the set, it's not the widest set in the world, but it's pretty much the tallest set, because the whole set is 12 feet up in the air. So you're going up steps and steps and steps.
I really wanted this to be the answer. I really wanted it to be a very deep set.
Yeah. So you are high up, essentially. And underneath it, so you've got 12 feet underneath it, and underneath it is one chair and the contestants as well. Just set off to the side, so still underneath everything, is the contestant wheel that you see on camera that they are spun on, and everyone is chosen randomly. Ben is right in saying that there's only one seat actually directly underneath, but it's all connected. So everything is pretty much exactly like you see on television, which is absolutely brilliant. And you've got these 3 people. On the one I did it, one of them never came up at all. It's
gutting, isn't it?
Yeah, it's random. I can't tell you too much about the episode I was on, but again, something happened that made me know it's the little thing that goes around the arrow. It is completely random. I can absolutely assure everybody of that. But yeah, you go in and you're an enormous hangar, and it is like, it's like a huge mezzanine level, this incredible set just absolutely floating in the air, and underneath it all the kind of gubbins and this seat and all the dry ice coming up and all that stuff. So it's really, they physically created the thing that you see on television. Tom Blakeson, who is the producer, his brother is a very, very fine movie director called Jay Blakeson. And Jay had said to Tom when he first watched it, he said, "How much have you spent on CGI on that? It's amazing." And Tom said, "Oh, there's no CGI. It's all for real." And Jay was like, "No way. No way you built that." And they absolutely have this enormous set and these enormous screens and this enormous mechanism like high up in the air. It's an extraordinary piece of kit. But I remember also we had another question about the wheel a while back, which was, does it make people dizzy? You know,
yes.
is that a thing? And funnily enough, I turned up quite late because of various reasons, in fact, because of our podcast and in lots of traffic. So I was a bit late. So I missed some of the initial kind of, they do little cutaway shots of everyone on little GoPros just so they can cut them in at any point of the show. They're filming you throughout the show as well, but just to give them extra bit of coverage. And so when you turn up, you're sort of spun around about 30 times before the show even starts just to get various cutaway shots. And I missed all of that. So thank you for the podcast overrunning. That was an absolute dream. But one of the celebrities I was on with had to leave the show because they absolutely got too dizzy and they were ill, and they had to be replaced at the last minute. And another
that on the morning of?
Yeah.
Has it ever happened before?
It had happened once before, they were telling me. So we were waiting around for quite a while after these initial cutaways, waiting to do the show. And I was like, I wonder if it normally takes this long. And they said, "Oh, here's the situation." Contestant X had to go home because they were nauseous and just couldn't, because it's been pretty quick.
It's like being seasick.
Yeah, it's not SAS, are you tough enough? But it's, Marina, it's not far off.
No, I would give you a VC for going on it. I would give you, at least a military cross or George Cross, something big. Yeah, I'd give you a medal, but...
One of the big ones.
Yeah.
So at the last minute, because they were filming 2 shows in a day, and Tony Bellew had turned up early for his other show because he's a boxer, so he's got some actual discipline. And so he got drafted in to our wheel instead of the, I won't say who it was, but genuinely, that person was not well. But it really doesn't, as I say, it's happened like once before in the whole history of that show. But it was great fun. It was, we had lovely people on mind. Steph McGovern,
very good,
from The Rest Is Money and other things. She was on. Anton Beck was on. We had a good old Strictly Goss. That was
there's a lot to gossip about, certainly at the moment. Yes,
it was. He is the soul of discretion.
I can imagine.
Anton Beck, as you can imagine, he really is. Lovely Kyle Smith-Bino was on. So I had a nice bunch, but one of them unfortunately had to sacrifice their place on the wheel. But it was enormous. When it goes out, I'll tell you a bit more. Something very interesting happened during that episode, which I will talk about, but no spoilers at all. But after it's gone out, which I think it goes out in the autumn after Strictly.
This is a two-part answer. I like this. We're spreading it out.
This is a two-part answer.
It's a sequel.
But that's also an interesting thing. The thing that goes out after Strictly, because whenever you film a television show of any sort, or if anyone comes on House of Games and films, people always say, "Oh, when's it coming out? Is it out next week?" And of course, you sort of film when you film. You film when people are available. And by and large, if you've got a big show, and The Wheel is a very big show for the BBC, you want to go out in the autumn or the winter. That's when you want to go out. So House of Games always goes out in the autumn and is paired with Strictly It Takes Two, and The Wheel always goes out in the autumn and is paired with Strictly. And so they record as many as they can now because Michael McIntyre is available, and save them, and they put them out where the maximum ratings are and where the big audiences are, and when the nights are drawing it a little bit, and ratings just go up and up and up in the autumn and in the winter. I will say one other thing, which is watching Michael McIntyre is a masterclass. He's so brilliant. He's brilliant with the punters. He's brilliant with the celebrity experts. He absolutely drives that show through, and it needs it. You need constant energy on that show, and he just is incredible. Paul Farrer, who we talked about on our theme tunes episode on Tuesday, the music is incredible. The Wheel music is absolutely amazing. Yep. The one thing they said was don't sing along with the lyrics of the songs when you go around, right? Because I think they can't use it if you're mouthing the lyrics.
Oh, that's funny. I always note people are always dancing but not singing.
Yeah, I mouthed along to every single one. I'm not sure if they can use me. No, but I couldn't help myself. I absolutely couldn't help myself.
The £300,000 guest.
Yeah. Exactly.
Great.
It literally cost them millions. But it was really a lovely experience. Michael McIntyre, I think, is such an incredible host. But yeah, of all the things, and Ben Arnold, thank you for that question, and also for your help in the Revolutionary Wars. I would say it's one of the shows you would not be disappointed if you see it on TV and see the set and you walk into that space and see how they built it and see how they put it together. It's an absolute testament to the craft of set building and set designing and cameras and lights and all that sort of stuff. It was a real sort of Blade Runner-esque treat.
Right. On that note, because it's unbeatable for now, let us go to a break. This episode is brought to you by Sky. Sky is home to some of the very best shows, including, and we're very excited about this, the brand new season of House of the Dragon.
That's right. Season 2, House of the Dragon, is streaming right now on Sky. You're an enormous fan, aren't you?
I am an enormous fan. And if you're not already an enormous fan, you can catch up with the first season. But the new one has just dropped, and the hype is justified. The first episode is brilliant. Can't wait to see more of what's going to happen. Now everyone's at war, and more shocking twists and turns.
There's a lot of dragon action in this.
There's a huge amount of dragons. There's going to be 5 new dragons.
And the clue's in the name, right?
Yeah. House of many dragons, but actual real name of the show, House of the Dragon.
Best dragon?
Best dragon. There's a massive one that hasn't been claimed yet called Vermithor. That's huge.
Vermithor.
That's a very powerful dragon. There's a little one called Moondancer.
House of the Dragon is available now exclusively on Sky.
Go to sky.com to find out more.
Welcome back, everybody. Marina, one for you. It's a top 3, which you're warming towards.
It's really weird. You're changing me, and I like it. I like what I'm becoming.
Anna Jackson has a question for you, Marina. She says, "What are your favourite movie sequels that are better than the original?" Me and my partner Stephen have come up with a shared list. This is Anna talking, not me. And she said the list is Toy Story 2, Shrek 2, and The Dark Knight. Okay,
Anna, thank you for this question. Those are none of mine, but I get the point. I get the point.
Anna.
No, I get the point. I'm trying to think. Honestly, okay, there are some. I'm going to put a really weird one that you're going to think, why are you doing this? Because I can tell you what, it can't all be Bad Boys 2 and Fast 5, which, by the way, are 2 ones that are way better than the original. If you don't know the filmmaker, Joanna Hogg, she is extraordinary. She is a British filmmaker. And these are beautiful, odd, amazing films. Souvenir, which is sort of semi-autobiographical story of a young filmmaker. But Souvenir Part 2 is better even than Souvenir. And that is an art house one, but they can't all be blockbusters, which I'm about to go to.
You don't often get sequels to art house films.
Well, she's an extraordinary person, and if you don't know her work, I really advise you to take a look. Okay, now I'm going to because of including Joanna Hogg, this is a sentence that hasn't been spoken before, I've had to not include Terminator 2 or Aliens, both of which, by the way, are absolute bangers. And I think I'd probably have to put Terminator 2 above Aliens because I still think Alien perhaps is the better movie. But so in the number 2 spot, The Empire Strikes Back, because it could have gone, it's hard to think now, but it could have gone after the original Star Wars. The Empire Strikes Back shows us that the storytelling can be different. It can be darker. It can be the lore is much deeper. So Empire Strikes Back is much better than Star Wars: A New Hope, as Episode 4 is called. Number 1, Godfather Part 2. I'm sorry, okay. This is probably a cliched choice, but it's a cliche for a reason. I think it's absolutely extraordinary and better than the first one.
Okay, I'll have a couple. My number 3, just because it's got the best title of any sequel ever, is the sequel to Dude, Where's My Car?
Oh, yes.
And the sequel is called Seriously, Dude, Where's My Car? So I'm going to put that number 3. Number 2, because no one ever talks about comedies, and comedy is so underrepresented in every list of movies ever made. But I loved 21 Jump Street, which was the remake of with Jonah Hill and Channing Tatum. But even better is the follow-up 22 Jump Street,
yes,
which is an absolutely terrific film. Both of those are
great. It is better, you're right.
Films.
Okay.
And my number 1, I'm going joint, and I'll go joint for a reason, which is Iron Man 3, which is the one with the incredible Ben Kingsley performance in it. So go Iron Man 3 and Mission Impossible 5. And I'm putting them together because they're both written by the same person, who's a British screenwriter called Drew Pearce. And I think with both of those franchises, he wrote unexpected movies that absolutely transcended the previous films, and I think he wrote the best films in both of those franchises. And I think that's probably worth a name check, don't you?
Very good. Absolutely. But I don't think you could say either of those is better than The Godfather Part 2. And if you want to, you just did. Are you convinced that Iron Man 3 is better than The Godfather Part 2?
Am I convinced? Yeah, sure, yeah.
Okay, well, I guess that's the difference between us.
I'm gonna farage this. Yes, yes, that's what I said, and that's what I mean.
Right, let's just move on to the next question.
Yes, I genuinely think Seriously, Dude, Where's My Car is better than Godfather 2.
I liked as a sequel to something. I Still Know What You Did Last Summer. I like that one.
Alvin and the Chipmunks, the Squeakquel is a nice one as well.
Here's one for you, Richard, from Tom Perry. I have a question regarding shows like Who Do You Think You Are or My Grandparents' War, where celebrities have their family trees looked into. How do they choose who to have on? Do they scour the family history of random celebs until they find something and then ask them to come on?
It's exactly what they do, funnily enough. They look into everybody without permission, if you know what I mean. You don't need permission to look into someone's family tree. So they will look at everybody. They will sometimes ask you, they say, look, we have started looking into you. Would you object? And you kind of go, no, that's okay. Are there older members of your family we could speak to? And then you put them in touch with. And as everyone knows, older members of their family, would you like to talk about your family? Yes. Yes, I would. So that's a fairly open door. And then the trail can go cold for a very long time. And often they find absolutely nothing, in which case they can't make the show, but they will still give everyone the research that they did. So, even if, I think Charles Kennedy once, the late Charles Kennedy once spoke about the fact that they were looking into him, and they discovered that every single generation of his family, going back sort of 400 years, had lived in exactly the same croft on exactly the same bit of land up in the Highlands. And they said, Charles, I'm really sorry, we can't really do a lot with it. So yeah, absolutely, they can look into you and then not do the show. With my Who Do You Think You Are? I think it's like that. It took a while, and then they found a story about a murder mystery down in Brighton. And they thought, well, this seems to work. So this seems to be quite on brand. So they will look into every possible side and every possible angle. And if you watch them, sometimes they're talking about, like mine was a 5 times great grandfather and great grandmother. Sometimes it would be literally the grandfather. Sometimes it would be a great grandmother. Sometimes it'll be an offshoot of the family in a different country, because they will go down every single avenue until they find something that A, tells us a story about our social history, or B, provides an interesting precinct to film in and to go and to tell a story we haven't seen before. But you will not always get that. But yeah, absolutely what they do, they will research huge amounts of people. Most people have got a little something somewhere, enough that you can make a television program out of, if you're happy to, as you say with mine, if you're happy to go back 5 or 6 generations. And then whoever you are, they will send you ream upon ream of information about your family, which is amazing. So my mum now has every single bit of information they got from my family, every single bit of which is born, place X, job, labourer, died, workhouse. No one moved about 3 miles down the road from anywhere. They must have, I think it took them a long time before they finally found my great grandfather being involved in a murder trial, not as a murderer or as a victim. And when they went, finally, we've got something in this family.
One of the things I always find so amazing about the program is how, who do you think you are, is how emotional actually the celebrities can get from this kind of, in some senses, can be quite dry information. And I find it particularly interesting because I always think of them as quite sort of propulsive, celebrities as quite propulsive individuals. They look forward and perhaps not back, and they're quite driven. And there's something about people being forced to confront a lot of dead ends, as you've just said, that sense of just a lot of people feeling as though they were in kind of condemned lives or what. I think there's something so interesting about watching how emotional people get, and it's so authentic.
I cried immediately.
Yeah.
My mum, who was interviewed on camera as well, she said the only thing about Who Do You Think You Are I don't like is when they cry. Why are they crying? You don't know these people. And of course, my mum and I are very different people. And literally the first chat I had with my mum, we were talking about my grandfather, who I adored, and I was just in floods of tears. She wasn't, and that's her dad. So my mum was just looking at me witheringly. And my mum has a wonderful heart,
yeah,
but she's not given to sentimentality in that way. And if there's one thing in this life I'm given to, other than reaching things from high shelves, it is sentimentality. And so I was weeping buckets. I love it.
I'm going to go rewatch yours.
I have a question for you, Marina, from Joanna Morris. Thank you, Joanna. Joanna asks, with the Taylor Swift Eras tour in the UK, what are the logistics of a huge concert tour? Does everything get transported, or is something sourced locally, e.g. tour buses, lighting, screens?
Okay. I know someone who used to do concert logistics. It's quite a harrowing job for reasons we'll come on to. And someone else who is helping us is Maz Tapuni, who is the co-founder of Communion One Promotions. Any arena tour that's stadium level, the artist carries all of their stuff. It's everything. That's the PA, the lighting, the screens, the stage, the sound desk, across the whole tour, across all the countries and all the continents, because they need it to be exactly the same every single night, because there are so many things anyway that can go wrong when you're kind of putting up a new show in different places, that you need to be sure of every single thing. Now, and as I say, entertainment logistics is very, very stressful, and it's a sort of freight category all of its own on the airlines. In Beyonce's Formation tour, I think she had 7 747 cargo planes. It is just because you can't say, oh, sorry, there was an 8-hour hold up at customs. Often they'll have 2 sets of everything on a really big artist, in order that the second, or sometimes 3, in the second set of kit can be with the advance party going to the next city or wherever to set up, because it takes a while to set up the staff.
That's like my brother, who is in a band. He's got 2 passports, because you always have to send your passport off. If you're doing a tour around the world, often your passport is in the Thai embassy and you have to go to Australia. So he can piggyback his passports as they get their visas for different countries as they travel around the world. God, I mean, it is such a performance. You've got all the trucks have to be sort of padded. You've got to pack it all in reverse so it can be unpacked in the right way. You've got 100 crew. But even with all of that, I was talking to a friend of mine actually who saw Taylor Swift in Singapore, and said that the people have always said that the National Stadium acoustics are not great in Singapore, and I think she basically redid the ceiling.
in order.
No.
Yeah. I mean, these things are so absolutely enormous. You cannot have delays. You cannot have damage. And I think apart from being like the first AD on a movie set, jobs most guaranteed to give you an ulcer and worse is entertainment logistics. It is so hard and it is so stressful, and you're basically being constantly and it's always like that sort of just in time supply chain thing, but you're doing it all the time, and that's just part of the job. Much smaller tours obviously are not like this, and you source local things, but in the big state things, they even use they take their caterers all the way around the world, so nothing is left to local chance. You just own and run the whole thing.
And there's also a whole logistical effort like a year beforehand, which is if you're Taylor Swift, you know the dimensions of your set, you know the technical, you know the things you need technically for the set as well. And so you will have a whole group of people traveling around the world, going to every stadium they can possibly find, working out if they have exactly the right access, if the width is right, if the height is right, whatever you need, which is why big open air stadiums are often very useful. But there are only a certain amount of stadia in the world and a certain amount of venues who can take a tour of that size. And sometimes it's tiny little things like access roads, which mean it's impossible to use that stadium. So it's people's job year in, year out to travel around every single stadium in the world and work out exactly where you could land 737s nearby, what the roads are to get there, what the big access into the stadium is, and what you can build on, what you can't build on, when other events are going to be on, if it's a sporting stadium, when the off season is. So it's like it's absolutely any job with logistics in it. I take my hat off to anybody who does it.
Me too.
It's like that utter it, because we all rely on it our entire lives, and none of us could do it. And the second it goes wrong, we bitch so badly.
Yeah, it's the biggest anxiety dream. Waking up, I don't know why my anxiety dream was being on reality TV. I think my anxiety dream actually, on reflection, would be waking up and thinking, you're in charge of the logistics for Taylor Swift's tour, go.
Yeah, if they just said, do you know what, Marina, 9-month tour, Stereophonics, Far East. You're like, no. Really?
I might dream about that tonight.
I've got a column to do.
Yeah, poor me, I've got to write a newspaper article. Yeah, no, I'm going to dream about this tonight.
Anybody out there who has logistics in the title of their job, thank you.
Thank you.
From the rest of us.
Yes.
Because I don't think they get thanked enough.
No, not at all. Not at all. It is heroic and beyond stressful. I think that about wraps us up for today, but do please keep sending in the questions to therestentertainment@gmail.com and your top threes, which are now just part of my life. It's happened. The crossover has happened. And
I've been having a great time listening to the Spotify playlist we made of all the theme tunes we talked about on Tuesday's show, which you can get on our newsletter. So restentertainment.com, you can sign up for it there. All right then. Well, thank you very much for listening, and we will see you next Tuesday. See you next Tuesday.